Okay, to start your lesson today, you're going to go to File, Open As. The reason that we choose Open As is because in Photoshop you can open many different documents, and this allows you to choose what kind of document you're choosing or you're opening. Open Bradley, Graphics, Photoshop, and today we're going to start with Lesson 1, Melon. So you double click on that, and inside that folder you want to double click Start 01 PSD. Okay, the purpose of this lesson is to teach you guys how to do selection tools in Photoshop. The first tool that we are going to look at is the second tool on the toolbar on the right hand side or left hand side of your screen. You're going to click on the rectangular marquee tool. Okay, it's got a square shape and it's dotted line. Usually when I suggest that you select things, I tell you to start in the upper left corner and drag it down to the lower right corner. So I want you to click and drag your mouse, and you are going to make a rectangle around this. Okay, when you look at your screen, you know that you can let go of the mouse once you do that. When you look at the screen, you know it is selected because you see the marching ants around it. And that's a term that we use in Photoshop, marching ants. So write that down in your notes. I would put marching ants, and then next to that, shows selected. Okay. Once you've made your selection, you recognize the marching ants. In this particular instance, we wanted to select the circle shape of the melon. But right now I have a square shape, so this one isn't going to work for us. I have a new keyboard command that I want you to write down in your notes. It is Control D. Control D stands for deselect. So you hold down your Control key and you press D. The other way to do it is to go to Select and choose Deselect. The next tool that we're going to select is the elliptical marquee tool. And if you remember in Photoshop, anytime you see a triangle in the bottom of the tool, you know that there is another tool hidden behind there. You're going to hold down your triangle and you'll see 4 flyout tools that come from the rectangular marquee. The elliptical marquee is a circular shape with a dotted line box. Again, I'm going to suggest that you start selecting in the upper left corner and go to the lower right. You'll notice that as I select, you'll notice that as I'm selecting it, I missed a little bit of my selection. I want to get just around the melon. There are 2 ways to adjust your selection. As long as you're still holding down the mouse and you haven't released the mouse, you can also press the space bar on your keyboard and it will allow you to adjust the selection. But if you have forgotten to do that and you accidentally release the mouse bar, the other way to adjust the selection, and it's really good for beginners, is to go to Select, Transform Selection. When you do, you get a bounding box that appears around your marquee, and then you can simply drag the side handles and the top handles in. So you want to adjust your selection so that it is a perfect outline of your melon. To get out of the bounding box, remember there's 2 ways to always exit out. One is to press enter and the other way is to press a check. In this particular instance, we don't care about having the marquee selected around the melon, so we want to deselect it. Remember, your keyboard command is Control D to deselect the melon. Now, in prior lessons, you learned that you could zoom in on specific areas of the canvas. So we're going to come down to the lower end of our toolbar. We're going to click on our zoom tool. Remember, it looks like a magnifying glass. And I am going to click on the blueberry in the upper left corner until I get to 600%. I can see a percent up here in the title bar of my document, and I can also look in the lower left corner of the document to see a percentage. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in. Okay, so our next step, we want to use the elliptical marquee tool, and we want to select the blueberry. So I'm going to start in the upper left corner of the blueberry. I'm going to make my selection. I don't want to get any of the exterior edge of the blueberry, so if you need to adjust your selection, you can do so. And remember, to exit out of the bounding box, you press enter or click on the check mark on your screen. So you've just made your selection, and now you want to move the blueberry down to the carrot. Remember, it's important to follow along with the instructions you're given. So in order to move something, I'm going to come up and click on the Move tool, and you notice that when I put the cursor on my screen, it looks almost exactly like the Move icon. It's got an arrow and then a crosshair below that. But when I put it inside my selection, notice what happens to your cursor. It becomes an arrow with scissors. The scissors represent cut. So we're going to click inside the blueberry, and I'm going to drag it down and put it inside the center of the carrot. And then I release my mouse, but do not deselect. Okay? It's important that you note that in this document, you're only working with one layer. So if I deselect the blueberry right now, it's going to essentially melt into the carrot. Okay? And what might happen for some of you, and I'll just show you with my example, if I do a Control D and I deselect, which remember I don't want you to do yet, but if I deselect, now my carrot and my blueberry are one piece. If I decide that I want to go back and make a change to my blueberry, and I select it, and I go up and I hit move, notice that it also took the carrot with it, because that was actually part of the selection. So you always want to make sure that you like whatever you've done before you deselect. Okay? When you like that your blueberry is in the center of your carrot, you're going to press Control D to deselect. This time, using the elliptical marquee, we're going to select the exterior diameter of the carrot. You want to make sure that you don't get any white around the edges. Remember that you can go up to Select and Transform Selection if you need to get it accurate. Okay, the next thing that we want to look at is how we can place this blueberry carrot combination onto our melon head. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to see the whole screen that we're working with. And in a prior lesson you learned that there was a keyboard command, Control 0 would allow you to fit everything on the screen. If you forget that keyboard command, you can always go up and do View, Fit on Screen, and you'll see that the keyboard command is right there beside it. Now, the next step, I don't want you to skip ahead because I want to make sure you're doing it with me. You learned how to move something, which was by essentially cutting it and moving it to a different area. Today you want to copy this eyeball, so what you're going to do is you're going to hold down the Alt key. You notice that when you press Alt, your icon now turns into two arrows. So you're telling the computer's telling you that you're making a copy of it. I press Alt, I'm holding it down, and I move my eyeball over. Remember that you need to Control T so you can see where you're moving before you start. We've just made our selection of the first eyeball. We're going to hold down our Alt key. We're going to press Shift to make it a parallel copy. I'm going to hold down both of those keys while moving the mouse. You'll notice that even if I try to jitter my mouse up and down, that eyeball is going to stay perfectly even. I release my mouse, then I release my keyboard commands, and I like where the eyeballs are at, so I'm going to press Control D to deselect. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is using the elliptical marquee, I'm going to select the kiwi. And I'm going to get, the kiwi is going to be puckered lips. But before you move it, I want to show you another trick that sometimes students mess up on. Okay. One of the common mistakes that students make is they will make their selection and then they instantly click and drag it over, but you notice that it only moved the marquee. Okay, when that happens, what the computer is telling you is, hey, you forgot to do something else. So move the marching ants back to where they belong. Then you come up and click the Move tool. If you don't choose Move first, the computer doesn't know what you're trying to do. So we're going to click on that. We're going to cut the kiwi because we only need it one time, and we're going to place it where the mouth should go. When you like where you've placed the mouth, you can Control D and wait for the next step. The next tool we're going to look at is called our magic wand. And if you look on your toolbar, count 1, 2, 3, 4 tools down, you're probably going to see the quick selection tool. If you hold the arrow out next to quick selection, you're going to see that you now have a magic wand. Okay, we're going to select magic wand. In your notes, I want you to write down the word magic wand. I want you to write the word tolerance, and if you look on your screen, tolerance is right there. I also want you to write down the word contiguous, which is also on your screen. Next to the word tolerance, in parentheses, write same colors. Next to the word contiguous, write the word touching. The magic wand works by selecting an object that has pretty much a solid color or similar tonal values. Okay, so what it does is if I come over here and I select my magic wand tool, I'm looking for something that has the same colors. Right now my objects are still pretty small because we're zoomed out, so I'm going to click on my zoom tool and I'm going to zoom in on the pear-shaped tomato. I'm going to go about 500%. Now, when I click on my pear-shaped tomato with my tolerance set at 32 and my check mark on contiguous, when I click on it, it's choosing part of my pear-shaped tomato. What this tells me is that whatever dot or pixel I selected, the computer chose 32 shades lighter plus 32 shades darker. So when you're figuring out tolerance and your total colors, you multiply the tolerance by 2 and you add 1. When we're here, we realize that it didn't select all of our pear-shaped tomato. So what I want to do is I want to hold down a hotkey that will add in this selection. Now the hotkey for add is going to be shift. So when I hold my shift key on my keyboard, you see that you get a cute little plus that goes right below your magic wand, and if you click, it will start filling it in. Now you'll notice that some of you will also have a reflection here that didn't quite get selected. So I'm going to click again, and now my pear-shaped tomato is complete with an outline around its perimeter. We've just made our pear-shaped selection, but I need to see where it needs to go on the face. So I need to Control 0 to fit back on the screen. Then I'm going to choose my Move tool because I know that that's how I cut it. We only have one nose, so I don't need to make a duplicate of it or a copy of it. So I click on the scissors with my Move tool, and I go down here, and I'm going to place the pear-shaped tomato on the nose. Now I'm going to deselect, so I Control D. And I'm going to get my zoom tool and I'm going to zoom in on this bow tie pasta at about 400% where I can see it really easily. The next selection tool that we're going to learn is the third one down. It looks like a lasso. Draw this in your notes. It's called the lasso tool. In your notes, next to the word lasso tool, please put the word freehand trace. Put the words freehand trace in your notes next to the word lasso. Okay, the lasso tool allows us to trace things the way that we would if we were tracing them on paper with our hand. The problem with that is that when we're working with a mouse, it's really difficult to get straight lines and sharp edges. So to solve that problem, Photoshop also created another tool below the lasso tool called the polygonal lasso tool. Write the word polygonal lasso tool, and if you hold it down on your screen, you can see how to spell it. You're going to write down polygonal lasso tool, and you're going to tell me that it does straight lines and sharp corners or sharp edges. Okay, on the next step, you're going to hold down your lasso tool. We're going to click in the upper left corner of the bow tie. The easiest way to use the lasso tool is to try to drag really quickly. The slower you go, the more jagged and jittery your hand will appear. So I'm tracing over here until I get to the top right corner. Now, I'm still holding down my mouse. I'm not dare going to let go. And then I'm going to press the Alt key with my finger. I'm going to hold down Alt until I tell you different. Now, when I hold down Alt, I let go of my mouse, and I click, 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 and basically I'm just connecting the dots at where the angles go. You'll notice it's giving you a really sharp, crisp line. If at any time I accidentally let go of the mouse or the Alt, it will start me over and it connects to where I started. I get to this corner and now I need to transfer back to the regular lasso tool. I'm holding down my mouse. I'm not going to let go of my mouse now, but now I'm going to release the Alt key. As I start to draw, you're going to see my icon turned from a polygonal lasso tool back to a regular lasso. I'm going to trace the two curved lines. I get to this corner. I hold down Alt. I'm not going to release until I'm done. I let go of my mouse. Still holding down Alt. I'm going to click on the corners with my mouse. This doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but I'm getting those sharp edges and nice corners and angles. So I click through this, and then I'm going to cross over where I started. Once I've crossed over and the lines touch, I can release my mouse and my bow tie is selected. I'm recording back. Now that I've got my bow tie selected, I'm going to Control 0 so I can fit back on the screen. Remember that I want to move this bow tie, so I have to come up and select Move first. I'm going to pull the bow tie down here and I'm going to put it below his chin. Once I like where I've left his little bow tie below his chin, I'm going to do Control D to deselect. And this is where we're going to stop for day one. To stop, I go to File. Remember that you can't save in your teacher's folder, so you go to File, Save As. The first thing that we want to do is we want to rename our file. So I'm going to come down here where it says Start 01, and I'm going to type, it's actually going to be your name, underscore, melon.psd. We want to leave it as a PSD until we're absolutely certain that we're done with this lesson. Then, after we've named it your name, Melon, PSD, we're going to come up here and choose your H drive. Remember that your network folder will end with the letter H, and then you're going to find your Photoshop folder and save it here. Once you hit save, you'll go back to this screen. You may close out of your document. Remember, the keyboard command for close out of a document is Control W. Okay, that's it, and y'all are done for today.